Good morning. So this week, COP27 begins and it goes on for 2 weeks. And it's a really nice jolly for all the climate alarmists around the planet who go somewhere every year and they travel there in their private jets to tell everybody else that we're not allowed to travel very much at all. So the participants, the climate alarmists, the globalists, they have a really lovely time. And this year it's in Sharm el-Sheikh, a nice resort in Egypt on the coast of the Red Sea. Very sunny for this time of year, I think. So there will be tens of thousands of people travelling there on their private jets and spewing out huge amounts, tons and tons and tons of carbon dioxide, which, by the way, is not harmful at all. It's just a natural part of the ecosystem. Every being, every animal, every human, every trees even, I know they take in oxygen, they take in carbon dioxide, but they also release it as well in respiration. All living beings release carbon dioxide. And it's not harmful whatsoever. Trees take it in, and trees use carbon dioxide to make wood and fruit and oxygen. It's very, very good. But they're saying that this carbon dioxide is so harmful, it's going to cause global warming. Well, they used to say that. Before that, they said it would cause global cooling. And now they're just saying it causes climate change because they can't really make up their minds whether the temperature's going down or up. Different decades, people say different things. Now, average global temperatures have stayed the same for the last 20 years or so. So they don't say global cooling or warming anymore. They say climate change. But they're still trying to alarm everybody else in the world with this idea from modelling done by the IPCC. The International Panel on Climate Change, that says that average temperatures are going to go up by 1.5 degrees Celsius as a median by the year 2100, so over the next 80 years. Well, this is clearly nonsense because for the last 20 years, average global temperatures have stayed the same. They're not going up anymore. In fact, in the last 10 years, they've very, very slightly gone down. It's less than 0.1 degrees Celsius, but it's gone slightly gone down since 2010. Nevertheless, that doesn't stop the climate alarmists from having a jolly and telling everybody else how to live their lives when we don't need to change our lives because this is a non-existent problem and they're creating ridiculous solutions for non-existent problems which are actually doing more harm than good to the environment and to society and to freedom all over the world. So the solutions that they're putting in place for this non-existent problem of carbon dioxide is to say that we need to close down all of our coal and oil and gas power stations and stop using petrol and diesel cars and start generating all of our power for the electricity grid from solar and wind and move from petrol and diesel cars to electric cars. Problem with this is when the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining, wind turbines and solar panels don't create any electricity. So the lights go off and then you have to resort to burning coal in the first place. Like Germany is the prime example of this absolute insanity. Well, what they did as well on top of this is they decided they're going to close down all their nuclear power stations. They did that in 2012 after Fukushima, which was its own unique problems. It was, that was a nuclear power station on the coast in a tsunami zone. Okay, Germany doesn't have that situation. So, they're reacting to a problem that didn't exist. But they decided they were going to close down all their nuclear power stations and have what they called an Energiewende, a change in energy supply. So they then decided they're going to generate all their electricity from solar and wind, except that doesn't work. So what they had to do instead instead was buy loads of gas and oil from Russia. And now they've decided they don't want to buy oil and gas from Russia because of this completely pointless, fabricated conflict in Ukraine, which the West has provoked and prolonged unnecessarily. So Germany can't buy fuel from Russia anymore. They decided they're just not going to do it. And therefore, they're now burning coal, lignite coal from East Germany and Poland, the dirtiest possible kind of coal you can imagine. So in order to save the planet, they're actually burning more coal, which is going totally 100% against, what even the people in COP27 would say. You got the same situation in the UK under the fake Conservatives. They decided to close down all our coal power stations, which before provided up to 40% of our energy supply, just 10 years ago. So now we're not generating hardly anything from coal. We still have 2 or 3 coal power stations open, but they want to close them by 2025 and go to offshore wind. Again, putting lots of wind turbines in the sea makes a lot of money for the people who construct the wind turbines. They love it. But it doesn't generate hardly any electricity. It certainly doesn't generate anything like the amount of electricity you could get from a few coal power stations. It doesn't generate any electricity when the wind stops blowing. So we have a problem in the UK, and when the wind stops blowing, the sun stops shining, we have to import electricity from France, who's still got nuclear power stations, although half of their nuclear power stations are offline at the moment as well. And the UK, like Germany, has decided, well, we're not going to buy oil and gas from Russia because Putin bad, Zelensky good, according to the UK government. I don't agree with that, by the way. It's just madness. We should stay out of this, try to de-escalate the conflict in Ukraine, normalise relations with Russia, end the sanctions and continue to buy Russian oil and gas, which will stop people from freezing this winter. But the people in the UK government, as in the US government, all over the world, governments all over the world are just so intransigent that they just won't reverse course on this. They've done wrong, they know it, but they just keep doubling down and doubling down and doubling down, which is very dangerous because that could end up with a nuclear conflagration, which would make all of this climate alarmism and COP22 and everything they're saying completely pointless anyway. But anyway, let's not go down that road. Let's come back to COP27 and what they want to do. There's other things that they want to do which are completely ridiculous, is to stop people from being allowed to travel freely with their cars. And all over the world, I know in the UK, but other places, local governments are implementing schemes to block cars from going in and out of their own neighbourhoods. Now in the UK, you've got some councils like Oxford and Canterbury saying they're going to fine people from travelling in a car from one part of the city to the other part of the city. And that's just absolutely mad. And it's an attack on freedom. Never before has a government, whether it's a national government or a local government, said, you can't travel in your car from one place to another, otherwise you're going to get fined for doing so. They put in charges. The first charge that was put in was the congestion charge in central London. That was, so that was about 20 years ago now. Over the last 20 years, you've had more and more places putting in congestion charges, emission zones, low emission zones, and so on. And now you're going to have these 15-minute neighbourhood zones where you're going to be fined for driving in and out of them, which is an escalation in the attack on freedom for ordinary people to move around their own country, even to move around their own towns and their own cities. This is where it's going, and this all comes from this ideology of climate alarmism and the Agenda 2030 program that they've got in that underpins that, coming from Agenda 21 and the Kyoto Treaty, Kyoto Protocol, of 1992, and then Agenda 2030 builds on top of that and came a few years later. And countries adopted that at the Paris Climate Summit in 2015. All of this is just making life far harder for ordinary people, and it's also helping to destroy the planet in the name of saving the planet, because some of the solutions that people have to reduce carbon dioxide emissions are absolutely insane, and they don't reduce them, they increase them. For example, in the UK, there's a power station called Drax. It's one of our major power stations. It does provide 2 to 3% of all our electricity in the whole country. But they've decided, because of Agenda 2030, because of climate change, net zero targets, they're not going to burn coal, because coal produces carbon dioxide. Instead, they're going to burn wood. Because according to Climate Alarmist's carbon accounting, if you burn wood, you don't produce carbon dioxide. I mean, you do, but they say you don't. So on their carbon accounting net zero books, they can say, we're burning wood, therefore we're not producing carbon dioxide, even though they are. The problem with that is the wood comes from prime forests in North and South America, which are being cut down, turned into wood pellets, leaving what was once beautiful forest and rainforest totally bare and barren, because the wood from all the trees that were there that's been cut down has been turned into wood pellets, shipped across the Atlantic to Drax, put in the power station and burned, so that we don't burn coal. And this is absolutely insane. Now, if the UK, just the UK, was to do that for all of our power, we'd burn through all the forests in the world in a few years. And other countries are thinking of doing the same as well. Belgium's thinking of doing the same, converting to burn wood pellets from other countries, importing wood from trees that cut down in North America or the Amazon basin, and then burning them to save the planet. This is utter madness. And the other thing that's absolute madness is the conversion of vehicles to electric vehicles, which need tons, hundreds of kilos, maybe even over a ton of lithium and cobalt for these huge electric batteries that conk out after 5 or 10 years, mined in horrible open cast mining, where there used to be rainforests in Congo and other places. So once again, to save the planet, they're destroying the planet, cutting down rainforests, destroying the ecosystem and all the animal and wildlife habitats above where they mine lithium and cobalt, using slave labor to mine these minerals, and then shipping them over to factories in the UK, Germany, the USA, wherever, and making batteries to put in our electric cars. Then there's not enough electricity anyway for the electric cars, because where do you get the electricity from? You get it from burning oil or coal or gas. And when you stop doing that, when you try to rely on wind and solar, there's not the electricity there for the electric cars. So everyone who's bought an electric car is suddenly finding, that there's not enough electricity for them, and they can't use their cars. If they run out of juice on the motorway, if they're doing sort of a 500-mile journey or something, you've got to find a charging point and queue up, and then spend 2 hours at least charging your car before you can go on anywhere. It's utterly ridiculous and nonsensical. And because of the conflict in Ukraine, there's not enough oil and gas in Western Europe to provide the electricity for the grid for what exists as it is, let alone all of the extra electric cars that they want. I mean, in the UK, for example, there's nearly 40 million vehicles. If they were all to turn electric, you need to double the capacity of the national grid, double the capacity of electricity available in order to charge everyone's electric cars overnight. And that simply isn't going to happen. It's certainly not going to happen by converting from your energy system from coal, oil, gas and nuclear to wind and solar, which produce nothing when the wind stops blowing and the sun stops shining. So the whole agenda is utter madness. It's going to mean that we don't have enough energy or electricity, and people are going to go cold. People won't be able to travel. Some people will die in the winter because of cold, because there won't be enough energy, because of all the different things that have come together in a perfect storm due to the madness, the insanity of the people in charge. Or maybe it's not insane. Maybe they are doing it deliberately in order to try to crash society and make us all poor. And then they can implement some kind of total control system where they say, you're not allowed to use energy at this time of day. You can only use energy at this time of day on your smart meter. And then people will be controlled with a fabricated scarcity of energy, which will go along with a fabricated scarcity of food and other things as well. Because when there's not energy, it's harder to produce food. When energy is more expensive, there's no diesel. So farmers can't drive their tractors around the farm to provide us with food, which means there'll be a scarcity of food as well. So that will mean, if we don't get out of this climate alarmism insanity, that all of these scarcities will be fabricated, and then the government can bring in a total control system and make everybody dependent on the government for scarce resources, which should be abundant if these people just got out of the way, or we remove these people who are deliberately trying to create a new world order under Agenda 2030 to make everything scarce and to take away our freedom. So this is about more than just hypocrisy of people flying their jets to a nice resort for a couple of weeks and telling everybody else not to drive our cars. This actually, I don't think this is just incompetence. This is part of a deliberate plan to transform our world, our society, our economy, as they say, with a great reset. And it is very, very malevolent. So these people are not doing this in our best interests. They're doing it in our worst interests. Though they can keep the few scarce resources that are available, swan around the world on their private jets, eat the best food, while everybody else starves and goes cold. Let's put an end to this. Stand against Agenda 2030. Stand against climate alarmism. Let's rebuild our power infrastructure and let's take back our freedom. Please join me in the Heritage Party in the UK, because we're fighting this in the political sphere. We'll be standing candidates in the local elections to fight these local plans that are bringing in 15-minute neighbourhoods. And we'll be standing in the Westminster elections to fight the New World Order as well. Thanks for listening, everyone. God bless you all.